Well, thank you very much for being here tonight. This is the final night in this series of lessons that we have planned for this week. I'm going to ask if I might indulge on you just a moment at the end of the service tonight to say some things by way of closing. And for now, I just would like to go ahead and get into the lesson. There's some things I want to say of a personal nature to you. And at the conclusion of the invitation song tonight, I would like to take just a moment to do that. Coming together in the middle of the week for a period of Bible study is something that at one time in the world, in our culture, was not so unusual. Now it's fairly unusual for folks to actually do that. But to come together on Sunday morning and Sunday evening and Monday evening and Tuesday evening and Wednesday evening, now that's something unusual. It's also a great privilege. And what a blessing it has been for us to have the opportunity as brothers and sisters in the Lord to be together this week and to sing together and to pray together, to focus our minds together on things that are of spiritual and eternal significance to us. Some of the things that we've talked about this week perhaps seem to some to be somewhat abstract. I believe them to be very relevant. Some of the things that we've talked about seem to be a lot of theory. I will tell you, at least in my experience, these things are becoming more practical every day. But I would also tell you that at the end of the day, it may well be that what finally is going to test us and challenge us the most is not going to be a highly renowned and decorated academician at University of North Carolina in the religion department. And maybe it's not going to be evangelical writers who are abandoning their confidence in the historicity and veracity of the text. And maybe it's not going to be those who are deciding that absolute truth doesn't exist and that each person finds his own individual truth within himself. It may just be that the thing that challenges us the most might just be the mundane realities of life under the sun. It was Job who said that man is born of woman, a few days full of trouble. That about sums it up, doesn't it? We get cleaned up and we come together here. We sit on nice cushioned pews in a very nice building with nice electronic equipment and nice climate-controlled situations. And we're grateful for all of those things, and we talk about things that are important. But when we leave and go out those doors, and we're back to the daily routines of the realities of our lives, each one of us has our own reality that we face on a regular basis. And ladies and gentlemen, we all have our sack of rocks. I've got mine and you've got yours. I'm carrying around some stuff that you don't even know I've got. I'm carrying around some stuff that I've carried for a long time. And I'm just talking about all the things that have to do with living in this life. And you're carrying around some of that stuff too, that is unique to you, that others don't even realize you're carrying. It ought to help us be a little more patient with one another from time to time, because among other things, when somebody is not maybe behaving at 100%, I just try to remind myself, I don't know about all the rocks he's got in his sack today. Maybe he's having a bad day. I can read and study and contemplate and meditate on the Word of God and on the evidences that are around us, and I can grapple with some pretty serious issues regarding textual criticism. And sometimes I can get a little bit riled up about some of that stuff as I'm reading what folks say. But that's one thing. Dealing with the reality of my life is something else. The challenge for me is to make those things meet. That's your challenge too. All of us have our stories to tell of things that took us by surprise, brought us to our knees, and challenged us in ways we never imagined we were going to be challenged. I'm not unique in that. You're not unique in that. But I will tell you this, my story and my challenges are mine. And yours are yours. Very real to you as mine is to me. When our son was 18 months old, he became sick. We thought it was just a routine situation. He was actually 16 months old, I think, when this started. Took him to the pediatrician. That was back in the days when they actually gave you medicine when you went. And he actually was given some medicine, and we went home and took about 10 days worth of that. He was no better, still running a fever, so we go back and we change medications, and we get another 10 days of medication, so we've had 20 days of medication, and the fever never went away. And so then we were getting a little bit concerned, and we did one other try of something, and a week later we were no better off, and the pediatrician said, I don't know. I want you to take him over here. And so we did. And so we took him to this ENT specialist, and he began working with him, and he said, well, it doesn't seem so much, but I don't know, let's try something. They did a little surgery. After the surgery, sent us home with an antibiotic, and 10 days later, still had the fever. We're almost 2 months into this now. And so we go back and we say, but what's going on here? And he said, I don't know. And so we went to another specialist. And he begins to run these tests, and everybody's doing lab work and blood work, all these things, and everything's coming back fairly normal, except that he's got a fever and his white count is elevated, and there's a problem somewhere, and nobody seems to be able to find it, and otherwise it just seemed like he was... The other things were not indicating anything. And so then this specialist said to us, well, you know, some kids just run a little hot. At which point I began to gather my stuff together to leave. Because being translated, I understood he was saying, I have no idea. And so, by that time, we were to the third month of this ordeal. At the end of the third month, we were back with our pediatrician where we had started. And we went through the month of December, trying first one thing and then another. In the month of January, he became worse. We ended up in the hospital, I think twice, 2 different times. There in Bowling Green. The second time he was in the hospital for a week. They sent him home on a Friday afternoon at 3 o'clock. He had a fever of 102, and he was hardly able to keep anything down. And they told us, we don't know anything else to do. On Monday morning, we were in the pediatrician's office, and I said, Dr. Smith, we need to go somewhere. He said, yeah, you do. He said, I've called one of my professors from medical school. He teaches pediatric infectious diseases at the university. He's agreed to take your case. We drove to Louisville, and we met with this doctor, and we were hospitalized in Kosare Children's Hospital for 2 days. Every test you can imagine. At the end of 2 days, Dr. Adams came in and said, I don't know. He said, I want you to go home. I have a new drug we're going to try. Let's see what happens. We went home 5 days later. His fever was 105. We were driving back to Louisville to the Kosare emergency in a blinding snowstorm on a February day. They were waiting for us with a team at the emergency room, and they worked on him all night long. And the next morning, Dr. Adams came into the room, dropped the chart on the bed, collapsed into a chair, exhausted, folded his arms, and he said, Mr. and Miss Thomley, I have no idea what's wrong with this child. I can tell you at that moment, I'm not saying this is right, I'm just telling you, at that moment, I wasn't thinking much about textual criticism. I wasn't really going over in my mind some of the arguments being made by German theologians at the end of the 18th century. That's really not what was challenging me. What was challenging me was that somebody I loved was in trouble and hurting. And it appeared that was not going well at all. And I had prayed and prayed. And my wife had prayed and prayed. And Christians at church had prayed and prayed. Now, I'm just asking you tonight, do you understand the challenge I'm talking about here? It's not an abstract thing. It's not a theoretical thing. And I'm saying to you that the challenges that we need to be careful with, in addition to all these other things we've been talking about this week that really have my adrenaline flowing, the challenges we need to be careful about are the ones that are going to catch us by surprise and just rip the cords of our heart right out of our chest. In the 11th chapter of the Gospel of John, there was a certain man that was sick, Lazarus of Bethany, of the village of Mary and her sister Martha. And it was that Mary who had anointed the Lord with ointment and wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was sick. The sisters therefore sent unto him, saying, Lord, he whom thou lovest is sick. But when Jesus heard it, he said, this sickness is not unto death, but for the glory of God, that the Son of God may be glorified thereby. Now, Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. When therefore he heard that he was sick, he abode at that time 2 days in the place where he was. Then, after this, he saith to the disciples, let us go into Judea again. The disciples said unto him, Rabbi, the Jews were seeking to stone thee, and goest thou thither again? And Jesus said, are there not 12 hours in the day? If a man walk in the day, he stumbles not, because he sees the light of this world. But if a man walks in the night, he stumbles because the light is not in him. These things he spake, and after this he said unto them, our friend Lazarus is fallen asleep, but I go that I may awake him out of sleep. The disciples therefore said unto him, Lord, if he is fallen asleep, he will recover. Now Jesus had spoken of his death, but they thought he spoke of taking rest in sleep. Then Jesus therefore said unto them plainly, Lazarus is dead. And I am glad for your sakes that I was not there, to the intent that you may believe. Nevertheless, let us go unto him. Thomas therefore, who is called Didymus, said unto his fellow disciples, let us also go that we may die with him. So when Jesus came, he found that he had been in the tomb 4 days already. Now Bethany was nigh unto Jerusalem, about 15 furlongs off. Many of the Jews had come to Martha and Mary to console them concerning their brother. Martha, therefore, when she heard that Jesus was coming, went and met him, but Mary sat still in the house. Martha, therefore, said unto Jesus, Lord, if thou hadst been here, my brother had not died. And even now I know that whatsoever thou shalt ask of God, God will give thee. Jesus saith unto her, thy brother shall rise again. Martha said unto him, I know that he shall rise again in the resurrection at the last day. And Jesus said, I am the resurrection and the life. He that believeth on me, though he die, yet shall he live. And whosoever liveth and believeth on me shall never die. Believest thou this? And she said unto him, Yes, Lord. I have believed that thou art the Christ, the Son of God, even he that cometh into the world. And when she had said this, she went away and called Mary her sister secretly, saying, The teacher is here, and calleth thee. And she, when she heard it, arose quickly and went unto him. Now Jesus was not yet come into the village, was still in the place where Martha met him. The Jews then, who were with her in the house, and were consoling her, when they saw Mary that she rose up quickly and went out, they followed her, supposing that she was going unto the tomb to weep there. Mary, therefore, when she came where Jesus was and saw him, fell down at his feet, saying unto him, Lord, if thou hadst been here, my brother had not died. When Jesus therefore saw her weeping, and the Jews also weeping who came with her, he groaned in the spirit and was troubled. And he said, Where have you laid him? And they said unto him, Lord, come and see. And Jesus wept. I want to say to you tonight, there are four things in our kingdom life. The few days that we are making our journey here on earth and life under the sun, four things that we need to remember. Number one, I want you to remember this. God is unpredictable. And what I mean by that is, just when you expect something, God's not what you expect. Just when you expect him to say something, he says something else. Just when you expect him to do something, he did something else. You remember in Isaiah chapter 55 what God said to his people through the mouth of the prophet Isaiah? He's trying to tell them why it is that way and why we cannot predict God. He said, the reason that you cannot predict me is because my thoughts are not your thoughts. Neither are my ways your ways, saith the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. You think you've got God all figured out? That you know what he would say, you know what he would do, you know how he would act? I'm telling you tonight, God reveals himself as a God who is unpredictable. We have not got him figured out in that sense. Because God is God and we are not. That's the problem. Do you remember when all of the calamities came upon Job and they all came at one time? They all came in one day. The next time you think you've had a bad day, go back and read Job chapter 1. In one day, Job lost it all. He lost all the cattle, he lost all the crops, he lost all of his family, he lost the children, he lost it all. He lost it all. Then he lost his health. And then his friends come to help him out. They sat with him 7 days and didn't say anything. It was their best 7 days. And then they opened their mouth and tried to explain what God was doing. That's where they went wrong. And Job was arguing with them every step of the way. It's not like that. Job, the reason people suffer is because they deserve it. I don't know what you've done, boy, but you need to come clean. Put it out here. Lay it on the table. Just confess it. Make things right. They're telling him over and over again. The wisdom of the wisdom of the day said that after all is said and done, The reason people suffer is because they deserve it. And Job is saying to them, I don't know what you're thinking of me. I don't know what you think I've done. I don't know what you think my sin is. I'm telling you, not that I'm sinless, but I'm telling you this. It is not what you think. I am not hiding anything. God knows me. I'm ready to plead my case to God. I wish that God would come and talk to me. I wish God would explain this to me. I wish God would say something. I'm not asking God to give it all back. I'm just asking Him to explain why this has happened to me. I wish I could make my case to Him. I could make a good case before Him. I wish God would tell me. I wish God would explain to me. I wish God would speak to me. In Job chapter 38, it took 38 chapters. God finally speaks. Do you remember that? All of this talking back and forth between these pseudo-philosophers as they are giving their spin on what they think is going. Ladies and gentlemen, sometimes we sit around spending so much time talking about things we know nothing about. "38 chapters. And Job is saying, I just wish God would come down and explain this. And finally, I wish God would say something. God finally speaks. And He speaks to Job out of the whirlwind. And the first thing that comes out of the mouth of God is this. Who is this that darkeneth words without counsel? Who is this? Who do you think you are? Demanding of me that I need to explain myself, that I need to answer you, that I need to respond to your... Who do you think you are? I'll tell you what God said to Job. He said, big boy, you think I owe you an explanation as to how I'm running the world? Stand up here with your boots on and let me ask you a few questions. Where were you when I made the world, big boy? Where were you? Tell me about the sun and the moon and the stars and the planets. Tell me about the currents in the ocean. Tell me about these things. You think I need to explain something to you? I've been running the world since the day I created it. Wow. Don't you know Job was embarrassed, he asked. Now, what would you think was about to happen? At the end of that, God restores everything fourfold to Job. God is unpredictable. Ladies and gentlemen, and I'll just tell you right now, the one thing I know for sure about God is we just don't know all that God thinks and all that God does. We just don't know. God is unpredictable. Secondly, I have to tell you, we need to remember this. I need to remember this. There are times I need to look in the mirror and tell myself this. Life's not all about me. Lazarus was sick. The sisters sent messengers to Jesus. And they said, Lord, the one whom thou lovest is sick. And you remember the response of Jesus? Oh, I can't believe this is happening to Lazarus. Lazarus was such a good man. Lazarus is the last one that deserved this. I'll tell you that, Lazarus. It just is a shame that something like this would happen to somebody like Lazarus. You see all the other people who aren't as good as Lazarus. But Lazarus, I've known him for years. And Lazarus, and Lazarus, and Lazarus. And I'll tell you what Jesus said. Jesus said in John 11 and verse 4, this sickness is not unto death. This sickness is for the glory of God, that the Son of God may be glorified thereby. It's not about Lazarus. That's what he said. You can turn back one page in your text, 2 pages for me. John the 9th chapter. Beginning in verse 1. As they passed by, they saw a man blind from his birth. The disciples asked Jesus, saying, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he should be born blind? And Jesus said, neither did this man sin, nor his parents, but that the works of God should be made manifest in him. Their focus was on the blind man, and they said, Lord, who sinned, this man or his parents? And Jesus said, let me tell you something. It's not about the blind man. It's not about the parents. This is about God. I'll tell you something that I need to remember. This life and all of the things that are happening in this life is not revolving around me. It's not about my creature comforts. It's not about my precious little preferences, how I would like to have it, what I would prefer it be. It is not about me. Over and over again, when things happen in life, when things happen and we are affected in some way, we have a real tendency to play the pity card. And we have a real tendency to immediately become personally offended and hurt because this has happened. And when things happen in life that somehow affect me, I have a real tendency to begin to tell myself that everything that is happening and all of the consequences that are rippling from the epicenter of this tragedy, it's all about me, how it has affected me, what it has done to me, how it has hurt me. And I'm saying to you tonight, ladies and gentlemen, one of the things that we need to remember is what Jesus was constantly trying to teach his disciples over and over again. In this life under the sun, as we are having our experiences here, we do well to remember life is not all about us. It's not all about us. It's not all about me. And that will just help me a little bit. When I am so tempted to say at times, that's just not fair. It's just not fair. Yeah, well, I'll let you in on a little secret. A long time ago, the preacher in the book of Ecclesiastes, he figured that out. You know what his conclusion was? Life's not fair. Life's not fair from the vantage point of the human when you're just considering life under the sun. One of the things that helps when we're dealing with some of the greatest challenges in life is for us to remember that life is not all about us. I remember someone coming to Norton Kosare Children's Hospital just as they were taking Ryan in for exploratory surgery. And we really were at a point where we didn't dare say what we were thinking in our hearts. But I remember saying to a brother who had come, when we were off by ourselves, just the two of us, nobody else could hear, I remember saying, I think I can deal with this if I can just understand why. It was an older gentleman. And he said, you just as well get over that. First, I thought he was a little callous. Like he didn't really understand. He really understood. He understood much better than I did at that moment. Understanding comes later. I'll tell you something that shocks us at times because we don't really think about this until we've been there, but God never promised to explain everything to us. Not on this side of eternity, and I'm not so sure it's going to matter on the other side. I do know this. God has told me everything I need to know in order for me to be completely and fully the person He created me to be. He has told me everything I need to know in order for me to be completely and fully the person that I was created to be. And if there are some things that I'm not going to know on this side of eternity, then I'll just have to get over that. And thank God that even though He hasn't told me everything I wanted to know, thank God that He has told me everything I need to know. And then, I'll just remind you of the words of Jesus when He said, I am the resurrection and the life. He that believeth on me, though he die, yet shall he live. And whosoever liveth and believeth on me shall never die. Do you believe this? Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know. I don't know what has happened. I don't know in your family the heartache that may have come. I don't know physically the disease and the suffering that has been endured. I do not know in life circumstances the injustice and the unfairness that has affected your life in ways that has at times brought you to your knees. I don't know any of that, but I do know this. I do know this. One day, we're going to hear the trumpet sound, and the archangel is going to shout, and the heavens are going to open, and the Son of Man is going to appear, and on that day, only one thing matters. And I do well. I do well if every day God grants me life and breath. I do well if I stay focused on the one thing that matters. Psalm 73, the psalmist said, I know that God is good to Israel, and I'm not questioning the goodness or the righteousness of God. He said, but I want to tell you my experience. He said, as for me, I had almost lost it. My faith was almost done. I looked around me, he said, I saw the wicked, how they were living. They were prospering. They were happy. They were healthy. Their lives were going well. I looked at my own life. It seemed like everything I touched, every aspect of my life, Satan was hurling darts at me. I was being persecuted. I was suffering. Nothing seemed to work out for me. I looked at those who were not even acknowledging God, and their lives looked wonderful. And here I was committing my life and soul to God, and it just seemed like everything was working against me. Until almost lost it, he said. Until I went to the house of the Lord and considered their end. It is so important that we keep our eyes focused on the one thing that matters. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know where you are in your life right now, and I don't know what you're dealing with. I don't know anything about the rocks that you're carrying in your sack tonight. But I would suggest to you these 4 principles are important. If we're going to be successful in getting through this life while maintaining our faithfulness to Jesus. Stop this foolishness of trying to predict what God ought to do, what He will do, what He should do, what you expect Him to, because you don't know what God's going to do. And stop the foolishness of behaving and reacting to everything as if life is all about you. It's not all about me. It's not all about you. And even acknowledging the genuineness of your desire just to understand why it has to be the way that it is. You just want to know why. I'm asking you just to trust God that what we need to know, we will know. And some of the things that we want to know, we'll just have to wait. And whatever you do, even as we come to the end of this service and we sing this invitation song tonight, don't ever lose sight of the fact that after all is said and done, ladies and gentlemen, there's only one thing that matters.
when we stand before the judgment seat of the Lord Jesus Christ. The only thing that matters is that our name be written in that book. Is your name there tonight? If you're here tonight and not a Christian, you don't need to leave here without taking care of the one thing that matters. If you've never confessed your faith in Jesus as the Son of God and put on the Lord in baptism, you can do that tonight. And if you're a child of God and you have, for whatever reason, in discouragement, in frustration, in despair, in pain, for whatever reason, if you have gone away, I'm pleading with you tonight to address the one thing that matters and come home. While we stand and sing.